The Bentley sat lifeless on the side of the quiet main street, its glossy black paint reflecting the pale autumn sun. Steam curled lazily from under the hood, drifting into the crisp air. People slowed their steps as they passed, their eyes flicking toward the sleek, foreign car, but no one stopped for long. Beside it stood a man in an immaculate suit, his polished shoes untouched by dust, his expression tight with frustration as he spoke sharply into his phone. His watch alone could have paid off half the mortgages on the block. Across the street, a girl of 12 watched with quiet curiosity. Emily had just finished sweeping the floor of her father's small-town garage, her jeans smudged with grease and her ponytail tucked under a faded baseball cap. She recognized the sound, or rather, the silence, of a dead engine. She also recognized the kind of man who looked like he'd never picked up a wrench in his life. When the man caught her staring, his brow furrowed, and his voice took on a condescending edge. "Kid, this is $1 million car. You wouldn't even know where to start." Emily stepped closer, a mischievous spark in her eye. "Bet I can get it running in 10 minutes. The words hung in the air like a challenge no one expected. The man's lips twitched in something between disbelief and amusement. "You fix my Bentley, and I'll believe anything," he said. Around them, a couple of curious onlookers paused, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. The man crossed his arms, leaning against the Bentley as if this was all a joke to him. "All right, 10 minutes," he said, glancing at the gold face of his watch. Emily set her backpack on the curb and unzipped it with the practiced ease of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Out came a small flashlight, a screwdriver worn from use, and a rag with the faint smell of engine oil. Without hesitation, she popped the hood fully, the weight of it straining against her thin arms before locking into place. She leaned in, her eyes scanning the maze of wires and polished metal, listening for something no one else could hear. Her fingers moved with quick precision, tugging at a loose connection, twisting something back into place, checking the battery terminal. The billionaire's smirk lingered, but his gaze began to sharpen, following every movement as if trying to figure out how she knew where to start. A small crowd was forming now, teenagers with phones out, an older couple whispering to each other, a delivery driver pausing mid-route to watch. Emily ignored them all, crouching lower to inspect a hose and tapping it lightly. "That's your problem," she murmured under her breath, more to herself than to anyone else. She wiped her hands on her rag and made one final adjustment. "All right," she said, stepping back, her voice calm but confident. "Turn the key when I tell you." The air was thick with curiosity, the kind that made strangers hold their breath without realizing it. Emily took one last look under the hood, her eyes narrowing in concentration. Then she stepped back and nodded toward the driver's seat. "Okay. Now." The billionaire slid behind the wheel, still wearing that half-skeptical smile, as if humoring her. He turned the key. For a split second, there was nothing, just the tense silence of the crowd leaning forward. Then the Bentley's engine coughed, sputtered, and roared to life with a deep, smooth purr that rolled down the street like music. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Someone clapped. A teenager whispered, "No way," while another fumbled to get the whole thing on video. The man's hands froze on the steering wheel. He stared straight ahead, processing what had just happened, then slowly climbed out. Emily didn't wait for his reaction. She shut the hood with a quiet thud, slung her backpack over her shoulder, and started walking away as if fixing a luxury car in front of a small-town crowd was just another Tuesday. "Wait," the billionaire called, stepping toward her. "Don't you want?" She turned her head just enough to meet his eyes, a small, knowing smile on her face. "You're good to go," she said simply. Then she kept walking, disappearing into the parting crowd. The man stood there, the purr of the resurrected Bentley behind him, and for the first time in years, he felt something stir, a mix of admiration, disbelief, and a question he couldn't shake: who was that girl? He caught up to her halfway down the block, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. "Hold on," he said, slightly out of breath, not from the walk, but from the strange urgency he felt. The bet. You fixed my car. You earned the money. Emily stopped and turned, her backpack strap slipping off one shoulder. I don't want your money, she said simply, as if the idea were absurd. The billionaire frowned. Why not? That was a professional job. You could have charged me more than most mechanics in the city. She shrugged, glancing toward the modest brick building of her father's garage just down the street. You looked stressed. My dad says if you can help someone in 10 minutes, you don't charge them. You just, help. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. People in his world didn't do things for free, not without a hidden angle. But she was already turning away again, leaving him standing there with her words echoing in his head. He watched her go, the late afternoon sun catching the faint streaks of grease on her cheek. Something about her unshakable calm unsettled him, not in a bad way, but in the way you feel when someone shows you a truth you'd forgotten existed. The Bentley waited behind him, its engine now running flawlessly, but for the first time all day, he wasn't thinking about the car at all. He was thinking about the kind of person he'd just met, and how rare they were. A week later, the morning sun spilled across Emily's small kitchen table, where she sat eating cereal before school. The knock at the door was unexpected, firm, deliberate. Her father answered, and a delivery man stepped in, carrying a large, gleaming toolbox wrapped with a red ribbon. On top sat an envelope with her name written in elegant handwriting. Emily opened it slowly, her eyes scanning the thick paper. Inside was a letter and a folded document. The letter read. You fixed more than my car that day. You reminded me what success is for. This is just the beginning, keep building, keep helping. The world needs more of that. The document was a scholarship, full tuition for any engineering school she chose, valid whenever she was ready. Her father stood frozen, blinking at the page, then looked at her with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Emily ran her hand over the polished surface of the toolbox, feeling the weight of what it meant. She imagined all the engines she could fix, all the people she could help, all because one stranger had decided to pay forward the kindness she thought was no big deal. Somewhere in the distance, she could almost hear the purr of that Bentley's engine. But this time, it wasn't just a sound, it was a reminder that a single act, done with no expectation, could set something much greater in motion. And as she grinned at her dad, she thought, maybe kindness really is the best tool you can carry.